Welcome to Media Buzz. Let's go straight to our guest, Leslie Marshall, radio talk show host. Joe Biden is ahead in virtually all the national polls, 8 points in the Fox News poll, ahead in most of the battleground states. There's so many polls, we're just drowning in this. A lot of people saying, well, yeah, but the polls are wrong in 2016. But again, Jason Miller's language that the Democrats will steal it back. I mean, the 91 million Americans who already voted, their votes are just as valid as whoever shows up in person on Tuesday, right?
You know, yes, absolutely. And for people that still, and there are millions that have not, filled out their ballots who may not want to vote in person on Tuesday of next week, Election Day, their ballots count as well. Those who are not going to mail it in, but drop it off at the ballot box. I mean, one of the reasons, Howie, Americans don't vote typically is because they don't feel their vote counts. And to have that kind of language, I hope it's not a foreshadowing, if Joe Biden wins, of things to come from the right. And from within the White House, which, cries of, false votes, false election, fake election, stolen election. And I think that's, quite frankly, very insulting to the American people, especially those on my side of the aisle.
Leslie, Fox News poll out today says 51% of those questioned believe that COVID-19 is out of control. 21% say it's completely or mostly under control. Given that situation, it does seem like the media have made their decision, that the virus is much worse than President Trump is portraying. Not talking about February, March, talking about now. And isn't that an advantage for Joe Biden in the sense that he gets a lot of praise because he hosts small events and he always seems to be wearing a mask?
Well, definitely there are two very different messages coming from the Biden and the Trump camp with regard to COVID. I don't think that the media is making COVID worse than it is. And quite frankly, I think they're stating the facts. I was talking to my husband, who's a physician, this morning, and he said yesterday there were some doctors in the lounge that have been Republicans historically, and typically doctors do vote Republican. And they're not happy with the rhetoric that's coming out of the president, not just about COVID, but about them and blaming doctors about COVID. When the president standing in Wisconsin and says, that we've turned the corner and they're building makeshift hospitals because they don't have enough beds. The president, for many voters, is not steeped in reality. So if COVID is essential to voters, and we're seeing that especially among the senior population, like in states like Florida, then the president better not just watch his rhetoric, but his facts. And that's where it's different. Joe Biden talks about fighting the virus, and the president sounds like, hey, the virus is already behind us because it's behind him because he has survived it. But that's not the case looking at the numbers in our nation.
And this is what I'm asking Leslie. Shouldn't journalists, to the extent they have an opportunity, because Biden doesn't take many questions from the press, ask the Biden campaign to respond to these specifics?
Well, yeah, but look, if something is not true, there was a movie out, I think it was called The Contender, years ago, and there was an allegation against the character in that film made, and she wouldn't respond, and people were asking why, and because it wasn't true, and it turned out not to be true. Look, Hunter Biden's not running, Joe Biden is running. There is zero evidence from his tax returns and other means that he has, as he said, accepted money from any foreign government, China included. When you look at his schedule, his calendar, some of these meetings that are alleged just didn't take place. When you interview people that worked with him at the time are not working with him now, they also confirm that. And there are even people in the embassy who said, look, we don't even know some of the people they're mentioning from Ukraine, and we know every single player in Ukraine. So I don't think the Biden campaign is wrong to say it. And Ari, I would disagree with you. I've agreed with Ted Cruz twice in my entire life. And the other day was when he said, voters don't care about this whole Hunter Biden thing. I agree with him on that. So I don't think that if everybody was carrying this and putting it out there, that it would change things and hurt Joe Biden.
Let me come back to Chris. I want to briefly touch on, Ari, let me just move on here. We'll come back to it if we can. I want to touch briefly on the resignation of Glenn Greenwald, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter from the site The Intercept that he co-founded half a dozen years ago. He says he had to quit because he had a piece that was about the Hunter Biden allegations in part that was highly critical of Joe Biden and was told it could not run unless the anti-Biden material was excised. What does this tell us about the media environment?
I have no idea, because I have no idea how they run The Intercept. And quite frankly, once we got to the Edward Snowden stuff, I was off the buggy. I live in the world of politics, but but I knew that what was going on with the Snowden stuff, we were over Niagara, we were in a new phase where journalists were going to be challenged in a lot of different ways about a lot of different kinds of information and its sourcing. And I was right. We were all right. Things got a lot harder and a lot more complicated. I have no idea how the Intercept runs its operation, and I'm quite frankly okay with that.
The Intercept editors accused Greenwald of throwing a temper tantrum and say they just asked him to document some of the things he was saying about Biden. Let me move on to this question of, in recent days, last week or two, President Trump has harshly criticized, for example, CBS's Leslie Stahl. You know, he walked out of that 60 Minutes interview and then posted the video prematurely. I'll throw this to Ari. He said she has anger coming out of her eyes. He's also talked about hatred from NBC's Savannah Guthrie over that town hall interview. I get it that the attacks on fake news have generally worked well for the president with his supporters. Do you think singling out individual journalists are going to, this helps them at all?
Well, it's the broader issue. What Donald Trump has always done is govern as an outsider, never accepted the Washington rules. And so when he lashes out against fake news, Howard, what he's saying is, I'm not part of this inside Washington cabal. They're all out to get me. They're all out to get you. And there's a large percentage of America that agrees with that. They don't like the media. They don't trust the media. And so they accept this outsiderism. It has served the president moderately well. I think sometimes that he's stronger going on to other issues, having made that case. But I think by and large, it has really energized a lot of his voters who don't trust the press.
In the meantime, Leslie, on this question of attacks on journalists, you know, he's also attacked Fox News. He criticized Fox the other day for showing a Barack Obama speech and Joe Biden speech. It seems to me our job is to tell both sides. Do you think the personal criticism by the president of individual journalists is winning him any new voters in this final stretch?
Absolutely not. When you look at the disapproval rating, not just on a national level, but in some swing states, I don't think it's just disapproval about COVID, but perhaps where our nation has come. We are so divided. It is so vitriolic. You know, I have to say, I'm from Boston, and so is Leslie Stahl, and I always looked up to her as an outstanding journalist and hardworking individual. I don't consider her a fake news reporter, and I don't think it's presidential for an individual, Donald Trump or anyone else, to attack the free press. That's what makes one of the things that makes our nation great is our First Amendment, which our freedom of the press is included in. And in addition to that, I just don't think it makes anyone look like a true leader or presidential to attack an individual if you simply don't like the questions posed, tough questions, or what they've said. And we've seen individuals on our network and elsewhere attacked by him for that. And it's wrong. It may fire up his base. I agree with Ari on that some, but it's certainly not going to help people who are undecided vote for him.
Leslie, let me come back to this question of polls because on the one hand you get the Wisconsin poll by Washington Post ABC, Biden up 17 points. A lot of people say, oh, now it's definitely over. Then you get the Des Moines Register poll released last night, Trump up 7 in Iowa. Well, the race is really tightening. With this blizzard of polls, what does this do to the confidence of people on your side, the Democrats, who kind of had the impression that Joe Biden, you know, has never trailed in this contest, has got it locked up? A little bit of nervousness, a lot of nervousness perhaps on your side?
There's a little bit of nervousness, not because of all of these polls, because after 2016, my side definitely eye rolls at the polls, whether he's up or whether he's down. It's just the reality of numbers. First of all, I will say what's changed since 2016 are the pollsters, because typically a segment of Trump's support and voters from the white, non-educated sector, they don't typically, answer polls. They don't respond to polls. And that wasn't factored in 2016. So pollsters are doing, I believe, a better job when you look at the data of factoring that in. Having said that, people talk about landslides. There's not going to be a landslide. This is going to be very tight. My prediction would be kind of a flip from 2016, where Trump became president with very slim margins in some of these, especially Rust Belt swing states, battleground states. And I think that's what we're going to see on Tuesday for Biden. But it's a nail biter for both sides, not just.